Jamie
Yes,
Dimon,
indeed.
America's top banker. He's sounding the alarm on our growing national debt. Ashley, what exactly is DIMON? He's issuing a dire warning. What's it about?
A dire diamond warning, yes. He calls it the most predictable crisis in history. In fact, former House Speaker Paul Ryan said that. He just agreed. But he also says that Washington is facing a market rebellion because of the tab it's racking up. While Bank of America's CEO Brian Moynihan believes it's time to stop admiring the problem and instead do something about it. Well said. Public debt currently exceeds $34 trillion, going up as we speak.
In the heart of America's financial landscape, a storm of unprecedented magnitude is brewing, threatening to unleash a torrent of economic devastation that could shatter the very foundations of the nation's prosperity. As Jamie Dimon, one of the most influential figures in the banking world, sounds the alarm, his dire warnings about the mounting U.S. debt paint a picture of impending fiscal crisis that could dwarf even the most catastrophic economic downturns of the past. This is not a distant threat or a hypothetical scenario, but a clear and present danger that looms ever closer, casting a long shadow over the financial future of every American. The numbers paint a stark and sobering picture of the scale of this looming crisis. According to Statista.com, the national debt has skyrocketed to an astronomical $34.547 trillion as of May 2024. This staggering figure represents a debt-to-GDP ratio of approximately 123%, a level not seen since the aftermath of World War II. To put this in perspective, a child born in 2023 will have an $82,590 share of publicly held federal debt upon becoming an adult. As of May 2024, it costs $728 billion to maintain the debt, which is 16% of the total federal spending in fiscal year 2024. Even more alarming is the rapid pace at which this debt continues to grow. The Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, projects that federal debt held by the public will rise from 98% of GDP in 2023 to 118% in 2033, an average increase of 2 percentage points per year. Over that period, the growth of interest costs and mandatory spending outpaces the growth of revenues and the economy, driving up debt. Those factors persist beyond 2033, pushing federal debt higher still to 195% of GDP in 2053. Perhaps most concerning of all is the mounting cost of servicing this enormous debt. The CBO estimates that net interest payments on the federal debt will double over the next decade, rising from $739 billion in 2024 to a staggering $1.4 trillion by 2033. This means that by 2033, interest payments alone could consume nearly 25% of all federal revenues, leaving fewer resources available for essential government services and potentially necessitating painful tax increases or spending cuts. In this video, we will dissect Jamie Dimon's purview of the lingering national debt in the United States and the intricate web of factors contributing to this alarming fiscal trajectory, exploring the potential repercussions for every American household, business, and the broader economy. America's public debt situation can no longer afford to be ignored. Every prominent economic figure, including Wall Street's Jamie Dimon, is raising the alarm. However, while some of the most influential figures in the economy are calling for an action plan, the government has continued spending at a rate that will add $2.1 trillion to the country's bill by 2034. To understand the gravity of Jamie Dimon's warnings, it's crucial to examine the historical context of the U.S. debt problem and the factors that have led to its current state. The roots of this crisis can be tracked back decades, but it has accelerated dramatically in recent years due to a combination of factors, including tax cuts, increased government spending, economic recessions, and, most recently, the massive fiscal response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Jamie Dimon, the chairman and CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, is one of the most respected and influential figures in the global financial industry. With over 3 decades of experience in banking and a track record of successfully navigating his institution through various economic crises, Dimon's views on financial matters can carry significant weight in both Wall Street and Washington. Dimon's concerns about the U.S. debt are not new, but have grown increasingly urgent in recent years. In his annual letter to shareholders in 2023, Dimon highlighted the national debt as one of the most significant risks facing the U.S. economy. He argued that the current trajectory of debt growth is unsustainable and could lead to severe economic consequences if left unchecked. The massive U.S. debt poses several significant problems for the economy and, by extension, for every American citizen. One of the primary concerns is the potential for higher interest rates. As the debt grows, the government may need to offer higher interest rates to attract buyers for its bonds. This can lead to higher borrowing costs across the economy, affecting everything from mortgage rates to business loans. According to a study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, a 1 percentage point increase in the debt-to-GDP ratio is associated with a 2 to 5 basis point increase in real interest rates. For the average American, this could mean significantly higher costs for buying a home, financing a car, or starting a business. The impact on economic growth is another major concern. High levels of government debt can act as a drag on economic growth. A seminal study by economists Carmen Reinhardt and Kenneth Rogoff found that countries with public debt above 90% of GDP experience notably slower economic growth. The United States has already surpassed this threshold, which could translate into fewer job opportunities, slower wage growth, and a generally lower standard of living for many Americans. The crowding out effect of government borrowing is another significant issue. As the government borrows more to finance its debt, it competes with private businesses for available capital. This can reduce private investment, which is crucial for economic growth and job creation. The CBO estimates that for every dollar of additional government borrowing, private investment is reduced by 33 cents. This reduction in private investment can have long-term negative effects on productivity growth and living standards. The increased risk of a financial crisis is perhaps one of the most alarming aspects of the debt problem. High debt levels make the economy more vulnerable to shocks and increase the risk of a sovereign debt crisis. In the event of an economic downturn or loss of investor confidence, the government may struggle to meet its debt obligations. Such a crisis could cause severe disruptions in financial markets, leading to widespread job losses and a sharp decline in living standards. The 2008 financial crisis provides a sobering example of how quickly economic conditions can deteriorate in the face of a loss of confidence in the financial system. As stated earlier, the country's national debt has reached astronomical figures, a level not seen since the aftermath of World War II. And ironically, war is once again one of the major factors contributing to America's ongoing outlays. The Congressional Budget Office adds the most significant contributor to the cumulative increase was the incorporation of recently enacted legislation which added $1.6 trillion to projected deficits. That legislation included emergency supplemental appropriations that provided $95 billion for aid to Ukraine, Israel, and countries in the Indo-Pacific region. In addition to the initial legislative impact, America is legally required to meet ongoing funding obligations, which could increase spending by $900 billion through 2034. While financial assistance to warring nations accounts for a portion of the rise between the February 2024 prediction and this month's other responsibilities, make up most of America's bill. The CBO defines required spending as programs such as Medicare, Social Security, defense, and unemployment compensation. The CBO wrote, "The aging of the population causes the number of beneficiaries of Social Security and Medicare to grow faster than the overall population. In addition, federal costs per beneficiary for the major healthcare programs continue to rise faster than GDP per person. As a result of those two trends, outlays for Social Security and Medicare increase in relation to GDP from 2024 to 2034. The burden on future generations is another critical concern. The accumulating debt represents a significant obligation that will be passed on to future generations. They will be responsible for paying off this debt, likely through higher taxes or reduced government services. According to the CBO, by 2053, the debt-to-GDP ratio could reach 181%, more than double the 50-year average of 84%. This intergenerational transfer of debt could limit economic opportunities and reduce the standard of living for today's young people and future generations. The reduction in fiscal flexibility is another significant issue. High debt levels limit the government's ability to respond to future economic crises or national emergencies. In times of recession or other economic shocks, the government typically increases spending to stimulate the economy. However, with already high debt levels, such fiscal stimulus may be more limited or come at the cost of even higher long-term debt. This constraint was evident in the debates surrounding the fiscal response to the COVID-19 pandemic, where concerns about the national debt influenced the scale and nature of economic relief measures. The potential for inflationary pressures is another risk associated with high levels of national debt. If investors lose confidence in the government's ability to repay its debts, it could lead to a scenario where the Federal Reserve is pressured to monetize the debt, essentially printing money to pay off debt. This could lead to high inflation, eroding the purchasing power of Americans' savings and income. incomes. While the U.S. has not experienced high inflation for several decades, the 2022 inflation plowed ahead at its fastest 12-month pace in nearly 40 years. The inflation increased by 7% according to the department's Bureau of Labor Statistics. On a monthly basis, CPI rose 0.5%. The national security implications of high debt levels are often overlooked but are nonetheless significant. High levels of debt, particularly held by foreign countries, can have implications for geopolitical influence and military spending. According to the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Department of the Treasury, foreign countries held a total of $8 trillion in U.S. Treasury securities as of January 2024. Of the total held by foreign countries, Japan and mainland China had the greatest portions, with China holding $797.7 billion in U.S. securities. Other foreign holders include oil exporting countries and Caribbean banking centers. The reduction in public investment is another consequence of high debt levels that can have long-term adverse effects on the economy. As more of the federal budget goes towards servicing the debt, less money is available for crucial public investments in areas like infrastructure, education, and research and development. The American Society of Civil Engineers estimates that the U.S. needs to spend about $2.6 trillion over the next 10 years to bring its infrastructure to a state of good repair. However, high debt levels make it challenging to fund such investments, potentially harming long-term economic growth and competitiveness. The potential exacerbation of economic inequality is another concern associated with high national debt. The burden of high national debt often falls disproportionately on lower and middle-income Americans. Higher interest rates and reduced economic growth tend to benefit wealthy individuals who own assets, while potentially dwindling job opportunities and wage growth for others. According to a report by the Pew Research Center, in 1980, the 90-10 ratio in the U.S. stood at 9.1, meaning that households at the top had incomes about 9 times the incomes of households at the bottom. As a result, the wealth gap between America's most affluent and poorer families more than doubled from 1989 to 2016. In 1989, the wealthiest 5% of families had 114 times as much wealth as families in the second quintile, $2.3 million compared with $20,300. By 2016, this ratio had increased to 248, a much sharper rise than the widening gap in income. For the average American, these issues translate into very real and immediate impacts on their daily lives and future prospects. A young couple looking to buy their first home might find that dream increasingly out of reach as higher interest rates drive up the cost of mortgages. For a middle-aged worker planning for retirement, the effects of reduced economic growth and potential cuts to government programs could be devastating. Lower economic growth could mean slower wage increases and reduced returns on retirement investments. The Social Security Administration projects that under current law, the Social Security trust funds will be depleted by 2035, potentially leading to a 20% cut in benefits. This could leave many retirees with significantly less support than they had planned for in their golden years. A small business owner might find it increasingly difficult to access capital for expansion or even day-to-day operations due to the crowding out effect of government borrowing. For a recent college graduate, the burden of national debt could translate into fewer job opportunities and slower wage growth throughout their career. The Economic Policy Institute reports that wages for young college graduates have grown by only 2.2% from 2020 to 2024 after adjusting for inflation. This slow wage growth and the potential for higher taxes to service the national debt could make it more onerous to pay off student loans, save for major life milestones, or achieve the standard of living they may have expected. The potential for a debt-induced financial crisis looms large over these scenarios. If investor confidence in U.S. debt were to falter, leading to a spike in interest rates or a sharp decline in the dollar's value, the effects could be catastrophic. As Jamie Dimon's dire warnings echo throughout the corridors of power, the specter of America's crushing debt looms like a financial doomsday clock, ticking relentlessly toward economic catastrophe. With each passing moment, the $34 trillion behemoth grows more unmanageable, threatening to unleash a fiscal apocalypse that could obliterate the American dream, leaving an entire generation to inherit a nation buckling under the weight of its own financial recklessness. The longer the United States waits to address this issue, the more elusive and painful the solutions become. If you like this video, hit the like button and help us spread the word. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications on our latest news and analysis. In the meantime, check out one of these videos here to learn more. Thanks for watching.